Hey there. Come a little closer to the fire with me. Close enough to feel the soft breath of warmth on your cheeks, but not so close that the smoke stings your eyes. Let the room stay dim. Let the candle keep trembling like it's afraid to be seen. And forget the fairy tale version you were handed as a child. Forget the neat, heroic story where a brave young man slays a monster and everyone claps. The truth, if we listen carefully, if we listen the way the night listens, is darker than that. It always was. Tonight you're going to meet Medusa before she becomes a warning carved into stone. You're going to hear about a sacred temple that was violated, about a curse that turned beauty into something that hisses, and about a single, clean swing of a blade that made blood bloom into a winged horse in the dark. If you find a strange kind of peace in this shadowed corner of history and myth, leave a like. Subscribe if you want to return to this fire again. No pressure. Just a quiet sign that you're here with me, sharing the dark without needing to shout. Now, let your shoulders loosen. Unclench your jaw. Let your tongue rest behind your teeth. If there's a light on, you can switch it off. Or leave it low, like a distant harbor lamp. Take a slow breath in through your nose, and let it out as if you're fogging a window in winter. Good. We're going to walk carefully tonight. Not because the path is steep, but because the story itself is made of glass. I always find it strange, honestly, how myths behave like embers. You think the fire is out, you think the tale is finished, then you blow on it, just a little, and suddenly it glows again, hot and alive. The ancient Greeks told stories the way the sea keeps secrets, never in a straight line, never with only one truth. They poured their fears into names, their guilt into gods, their longing into heroes. They took the unexplainable, the sudden storm, the illness, the hunger that arrives like a thief, and they gave it a face, and sometimes they gave it a face so terrifying that it could protect them. That's the first thing I want you to picture. Not a monster hunting in a cave, a face on a wall. Imagine you're in a sunlit town by the Aegean Sea, white stone steps, worn smooth by sandals and time, olive trees with leaves that flash silver when the wind turns them, a marketplace hum, distant and warm goats bleating, a vendor calling out, the clink of pottery. You walk toward a temple where the air is cooler, where the smell changes from dust and fruit to old limestone and oil lamps. And there, above the doorway, you see it, a round, carved face, wide eyes, a mouth caught between a grin and a snarl. Sometimes the tongue sticks out, daring the world to look back. Sometimes the teeth are too many. Sometimes the hair is not hair at all, but a writhing crown. It isn't pretty. It isn't meant to be. It is a threat, used as a shield. The Greeks called it a Gorgonian, a Gorgon face, a protective ugliness, a way of saying to the invisible dangers of the world, don't come closer, don't you dare. It's funny, in a cold midnight way, how humans do that. We take something frightening and we nail it above our doors. We paint it on our boats. We stamp it on our coins. We whisper, see, I'm not defenseless. I have a monster on my side. But the monster in this story has a name, and one name is never enough. Medusa. Try to say it slowly in your head. Me-du-sa. It feels like a soft word that ends in a hard sound, like a wave collapsing on stone. A name that begins with a hush and finishes with a bite. Most people meet Medusa in the middle of her story. They meet her as a problem, as a mission, as a trophy waiting to be taken. A woman with snakes for hair, whose eyes turn men into statues. You know the image. You can almost feel it already, can't you? That instinctive stiffening in your spine, as if your body is practicing being stone. That tiny pinch of fear behind the ribs. But I want to do something different tonight. I want to walk backward through the myth, like stepping out of footprints in sand, I want to show you the shape of Medusa before the word monster settles on her shoulders like dust, because this is the part that stays with me. Medusa is the only one of her sisters who can. The only one who bleeds like you and me. The only one who doesn't get the clean, immortal escape. I don't know if you've ever felt that kind of unfairness, that feeling of being singled out by fate, by luck, by whatever name you give to the machinery of the world. Like everyone else got a coat before the storm hit, and you're standing there in thin cloth, pretending you're not cold. That's Medusa. In the oldest version, the mortal among immortals. And in the later telling Ovid's, the Roman poet who loved turning myths into aching tragedies, she becomes something else too. She becomes a girl whose beauty is noticed. And in myth, being noticed can be a kind of doom. We'll get to that. Slowly. I'm not going to rush you. The night doesn't rush, and neither will we. For now, keep the fire in your mind. Hear it crackle, not loudly, just enough to stitch the silence together. A tiny snap, a soft collapse of ash, a whisper of heat. Let that sound become a boat. We're going to drift out into older waters. In those waters, the gods are close, not distant. Abstract ideas. They are weather. They are appetite. They are jealousy that can bend a life out of shape like metal in a forge. Zeus is the sky that watches. Poseidon is the sea that takes what it wants. Athena is the hard clarity of stone and strategy, the cold intelligence behind a shield. And the world, to the Greeks, has edges. Not just edges of geography, but edges of safety. There is the familiar coastline, where fishermen mend nets and children chase dogs. And then there is the far place, the place where maps fade into blank parchment and scribes draw warnings instead of roads. Here be monsters. That's where the Gorgons live, in the earliest imagination. Not in the center, not where you can bargain with them in daylight. At the far rim, where the air tastes like salt and iron, where the ground is sharp with rock and the sky feels too big. If you were to stand there, really stand there, you'd hear different sounds. Not the friendly chatter of a market. You'd hear wind that doesn't carry voices, only grit. You'd hear your own breathing, loud in your ears, because nothing else is willing to speak. You'd smell cold stone, damp and ancient, like the inside of a well. And somewhere in that place, there is a cave or a hollow in the earth where statues gather. Not statues made by sculptors, not marble heroes posed proudly in sunlight. These statues are accidents. They are people caught mid-step, mid-plea, mid-breath. They are proof that the story's curse is real. Just thinking of them makes me lower my voice, because there's something deeply intimate about a person turned into stone. It's as if the world reached out and pressed a palm against their face and said, "Stay. Stay exactly like this." That's one of the 3 horrors I teased you with at the beginning. A gaze that freezes life. The second is what happened in a temple. A place that should have been safe. A place that smelled of oil and offerings and clean water. A place where a girl might have believed the gods were guardians. The third is the blade. Not a long, messy battle. Not a screaming war. A quiet act. A clean cut in the dark. And then the impossible. Blood giving birth to a creature with wings. I promised you darkness, but I also promised you calm. So we will carry the darkness the way you carry a sleeping child. Carefully, softly, without sudden movements. Now, picture the first moment of this tale as if you're there with me, not as a hero, not as a victim, just as a witness standing in the doorway of time. It's late afternoon. The light has a honeyed thickness, warm but fading. You can see dust hanging in it, tiny floating worlds. The temple stones hold the day's heat, and when you touch them with your fingertips, they feel alive, like the skin of a sun-warmed animal. Above the doorway, the Gorgonian stares down. Its carved eyes are wide, forever alert. And you, yes, you step beneath it. For a second, you feel protected. You feel as if the ugly face has teeth for you, not against you. You feel the small relief of being under a roof, away from the harsh blue glare outside. Then the air cools, the world quiets, and the story begins to breathe. Medusa is waiting, somewhere in the shadows of myth, not yet fully the Medusa you've been warned about, not yet only a head on a shield, still whole, still mortal, still, in some version of the tale, beautiful enough that the gods notice, and when the gods notice, the candle flame trembles. Let's take one more slow breath together, in and out. Good. Soon, we'll follow the bloodline that leads to Medusa back into the old sea dark family of monsters and let the edges of the map come into focus, one grain of sand at a time. So let me place you first on a small island Seriphos where the sea is always talking, even when the people try to sleep. At night, the water keeps brushing the shore in tiny, patient motions, and you can hear the hulls of fishing boats knock against the pier, a dull wooden tap, like the island's slow pulse. Perseus grows up there with his mother, Danae, not in a shining legend, but in ordinary salt-air life, nets drying on poles, buckets that leave cold rings on your palms, smoke from breakfast fires, drifting low because the wind is stubborn. He's young enough that pride rises fast in him, like a spark catching dry grass, old enough to notice how a king's attention can turn a home into a cage. Polydectes rules Seriphos. He wears his cruelty the way some men wear perfume lightly, so you can pretend it isn't there until you're already breathing it in. He wants Danae. He calls it admiration, destiny, courtship. It feels, to everyone around her, like pressure, a tightness in the room, servants suddenly busy, voices suddenly careful. One evening, the palace hall fills with a feast. The air is thick with roasting meat and spilled wine. Oil lamps paint the walls in wavering gold, and the ceiling beams are blackened by years of smoke history written in soot. Men laugh, cups clink, and for a moment, it almost sounds like safety. Polydectes announces a marriage, his marriage, or the idea of it, and demands gifts. Horses, he says, smiling as if it's a joke. The men nod quickly, because nodding is cheaper than defiance. Perseus sits there with empty hands. You can feel the heat in his face, can't you? That young, sharp embarrassment, the kind that makes you speak before you think. So he lifts his chin, and the words jump out of him like a stone thrown into still water. He says he'll bring a gift no one else can bring. He says he will bring the head of Medusa. The hall changes. Not loudly, no thunder, no screams, just a thin, nervous quiet that slides in between the laughter. Polydectes' smile narrows, satisfied, because now the boast can be used like a rope around a throat. Later, outside, the night air is cold enough to make every breath visible. Stars glitter hard, like salt scattered on black cloth. Danae touches her son's arm, and the touch is gentle, but it carries the weight of everything she's already survived. Perseus can't take the words back. They sit on his chest as he tries to sleep, heavy as wet wool. By dawn he walks to the shore, sand cool under his feet, the sea smelling of iron and distance. A small boat, rocking as if it's impatient. He pushes off without fanfare, oars dipping, water splitting and closing again like the world swallowing the sound. Ahead, the map grows uncertain. Ahead is the place where a face carved above a doorway becomes a living gaze, and the sea opens for him. Out, on the water, hours stretch in a slow, almost cruel way. The sun moves, the glare shifts. The boat keeps creaking wood, complaining softly at every wave. Perseus watches his own hands on the oar handles, watching the knuckles whiten, watching the little blisters begin to form, because even destiny requires friction. And somewhere above that bright water, The gods begin to pay attention, not with love, with interest. The way a hawk notices a mouse in open ground, a gull screams overhead. Perseus looks up, squinting, and for a heartbeat, the sky feels like a vast, indifferent eye. He doesn't know it yet, but help is coming, and help from gods is never simple. It arrives with conditions. It arrives with sharp edges hidden under velvet. The shoreline of Seriphos shrinks behind him until it's just a pale smudge. Then even, that vanishes. Only water remains. Only the rhythm of rowing. Only the quiet, steady thought. I've promised ahead. The sea keeps him company in a way that feels almost personal. Not friendly, just present. It taps the hull in a lazy rhythm, like a finger drumming while someone waits. Some mornings the surface is so smooth it looks like hammered bronze. Other mornings, it's broken, restless, throwing spray into his face until his eyelashes taste of salt. Perseus rows until his shoulders learn a new language of ache. Each pull makes the oar handles bite his palms. Each release lets the blade slide back with a soft gulp, water, swallowing wood and giving it back. Blisters rise, tender as small moons. He presses a thumb into one and winces bright pain. Immediate truth. It reminds him he's not a symbol. He's a body inside a promise he can't untie. Then the world changes without warning. The wind stops, not gradually, as if a mouth has been closed. The sea settles into an unnatural stillness, too flat, too attentive. The sail sags. Even the gulls seem to hang in place, suspended in a blue that hurts to look at. Perseus realizes he has been holding his breath. You know that feeling? When a room goes quiet and you suddenly become aware of your own heartbeat. Too loud, too exposed. It's like that, except the room is the entire sky. A shadow crosses the boat, clean-edged, wrong for this cloudless day. He looks up, and a voice arrives beside his ear, close and casual, as if a traveler has stepped up on the road next to you. Perseus. He turns, and there stands Hermes, young-faced, bright-eyed, with that kind of smile that could be kindness or trouble depending on what you deserve. Winged sandals on his feet, wings perfectly still, because he doesn't need to flap to be weightless. That detail always makes my skin prickle. Effort is for mortals. Hermes doesn't make the boat creak. He doesn't shift the planks. He is there the way a thought is there, sudden, certain. You made a promise, Hermes says, sounding almost amused. In a room full of men who wanted you trapped, brave, or young. Often it's the same thing. Perseus grips the oar until the wood bites. His mouth is dry. The first questions that rush up in him are the useless ones. Who are you? How? He swallows them down like stones. Hermes leans closer, and the air around him smells sharp and green, like crushed leaves, like the clean edge of an approaching storm. I'm not here to mock you, Hermes says. Not tonight. The gods are curious. Curious. That word turns warm blood cold. Curiosity from a friend feels safe. Curiosity from a god feels like being measured. Hermes tells him what no proud young man wants to hear. He cannot find the Gorgons by strength alone, not by rowing until his arms turn to rope, not by walking until your feet split inside your sandals. They live where maps give up, Hermes says softly, where the world becomes older. Then he gives Perseus a direction that is more like a wound than a road. Find the Graeae. 3 sisters, 1 eye between them, 1 tooth, a shared seeing, a shared biting, a grotesque economy of survival. Hermes speaks their names like dry leaves rustling. Dino, Enyo, Pemphredo. Athena will want her say, Hermes adds, almost as an afterthought, and with that he steps backward into air, and the air accepts him. Gone. Only a faint smell of sharp greenery remains. and the sense that your life has been picked up by larger hands. Perseus sits hard on the boat's bench. He flexes his fingers. They tremble. He laughs once, very quietly, because sometimes a laugh is just fear trying to escape without screaming. He keeps going. Time passes in the only way it can at sea, by repetition. Sunrise, glare, salt drying on skin, night turning the water into black glass. His thoughts circling, always landing on the same sentence. Medusa's head like a moth returning to a flame it knows will burn it. At last he reaches a rough coast. Waves slam the rocks and explode into white. The air tastes like stone being ground down. He drags the boat up, arms shaking, and when he stands on land, the stillness makes him sway, as if the world is rocking the other way. He walks inland. Dry grass crackles underfoot. Heat presses on his scalp. Sweat trickles down his ribs, and then near a barren slope where even shrubs look reluctant to live, sees them. The gray eye huddled together, as if they're trying to share warmth even in daylight. Hair thin and gray, stuck to their scalps like cobweb. Skin like parchment pulled tight over bone. Hands always moving, passing something between them with anxious care. The eye. When one sister holds it, it looks almost ordinary, wet, glossy, alive. Then it is lifted and placed into another palm and becomes an object again, a tool, a borrowed certainty. They don't truly see him until the eye swings his way. Then the three faces stiffen at once. Who walks with young bones? One rasps. Her voice scratches the air like a nail on stone. Perseus tells them what he wants. The path, the place, the way to the Gorgons. They laugh, stones clicking together. The path is not for you, one says. The path sleeps. Perseus watches the eye travel, from hand to hand, and a hard, human thought forms. If they share one eye, then for one heartbeat, none of them have it. When the eye is mid-pass, Perseus moves, fast, desperate. His hand closes around it, slick and warm, twitching faintly in his grip. The sisters shriek. Hands claw at empty air. Their bodies lurch like starving birds fighting over a scrap. Give it, give it, give it. Perseus holds the eye up, heart hammering. He hates himself for what he's doing. He does it anyway. Tell me, he says, voice shaking despite his effort to steady it. Tell me where. Panting, furious. The gray bargain. They speak of nymphs who keep sacred tools. They name what he must seek. A curved blade fit to cut what should not be cut. A sack that can hold what should not be held. A helmet that can hide a man, even from hungry eyes. They tell him the direction of the world's rim, where sleep lies heavy, and stone waits like a trap. Only then does Perseus return the eye. He places it into a waiting palm, as gently as he can manage, because even cruelty can have soft hands. He leaves before they can decide to curse him. Now, let your shoulders drop again. Let your breathing slow. The story can hold the sharpness for you. Because the road to Medusa is also a road backward into older blood. Medusa is not a random nightmare. She belongs to a family that feels like the ocean at midnight, beautiful, dangerous, indifferent. Many tellings name her parents as Phorcys and Ceto, ancient sea powers. I don't picture them as people. I picture them as pressure, as depth, as the moment you dive and your ears begin to ache, and the water says quietly, "You are not in charge here." From that sea-dark line come strange siblings, the gray eye, yes, and the Gorgons. Stheno, Euryale, Medusa. Stheno and Euryale are immortal, endless, untiring. Medusa alone can die. That single fact is like a hairline crack across marble. It tells you where the myth will break. Perseus finds the nymphs the way you find a hidden spring, by following quiet signs. A patch of grass greener than it should be. A coolness that slides along your skin. Water murmuring where no stream is visible. The air grows softer. Moss cushions stones. His footsteps lose their harshness. He feels briefly as if he has stepped into a kinder world. The nymphs appear like reflections, not dramatic entrances, just a shifting of light, a face half seen, a voice that sounds like wind learning words. They hand him gifts with careful gravity, a curved sword, bright and eager at the edge, winged sandals, light as a held breath, a helmet of shadow, cold against his fingers, a woven sack meant to contain horror without letting it leak. And Athena, whether as a presence beside him or as a thought that arrives sharp and clear, gives him the most important tool of all, a bronze shield polished to a mirror. Do not look at her directly, Athena warns, voice calm as stone. Let reflection take the danger for you. Perseus lifts the shield. Sunlight flashes off it, stealing the world for an instant. He sees his own face there, tired, salt-stained, suddenly older. A mortal face trying to carry an immortal task. At last, he reaches the borderland the gray eye hinted at. The ground turns gray. The air grows thick, drowsy. Even the wind seems reluctant to speak. And there, scattered like a cruel garden, are statues, not sculpted heroes, accidents. A man caught mid-run, one heel lifted. A woman, with her hands half raised, as if she was about to beg. A dog frozen with its ears pricked, loyal even in stone. Some half buried, time trying to hide what happened here, and failing. Perseus moves slowly among them. He keeps his eyes low. Every face feels like a question he can't answer. He finds the cave where the Gorgons sleep, the mouth of it is dark. Cold air flows out, stale and metallic, carrying a faint reptile scent that makes the hairs on his arms rise. This is where the myth tightens. This is where the boy's boast finally meets the world's oldest gaze. He pauses before stepping in, not because he's suddenly noble, because the body hesitates when it senses it might not come back out. His tongue is dry. He swallows, and the swallow sounds loud in his own head, as if the cave is already amplifying him. He adjusts the strap of the mirrored shield. Leather creaks. The sound feels obscene in this hush, and he looks carefully at the statues one more time. It's the faces that hurt the most. A mouth caught half open, as if a name was about to be spoken. Hands half raised, trapped in the beginning of a plea. Perseus walks past and feels something twist in his stomach, because every statue is a lesson carved in silence. One mistake with your eyes, and you become an ending. He tries to remember his mother's touch on his arm under cold stars. He tries to remember the smell of Seraphos fish and smoke and wet rope, anything human, anything ordinary. The memories slide around in him, slippery, hard to hold, because fear makes the mind drop things. So he whispers, almost without meaning to, if anyone is listening, let me live long enough to regret this. The cave breathes out cold. Inside, the darkness isn't empty. It has texture. It smells of damp stone and old skins and something sharp, like shed scales. A thin trickle of water drips somewhere, steady as counting. Plink, plink, plink. Perseus steps in. One foot, then the other. His sandals scuff rock. He freezes, listening for movement that never comes. Only the dripping. Only his own breathing, suddenly too loud. He raises the shield so he can see ahead without truly seeing. The bronze mirror catches faint light from outside and throws it back into the dark in weak, trembling shapes. His reflection, flickers face fragmented, eyes pale like he's already becoming something less than whole. And somewhere deeper, beyond what the mirror can show, there is a sound that is not water, a soft, dry sliding, like reeds rubbing, like a nest shifting. He knows what it is. The thought makes his skin prickle. He takes another step, slower. He makes his breathing smaller. He tries to move like the wind moves, there and then not there. It's odd, honestly, how the story makes Perseus the center, when Medusa is the gravity. Even before she's revealed, the cave feels arranged around her, as if everything is holding still out of respect, or fear, or both. And while Perseus creeps forward, let me pull you gently toward what waits ahead. In some tellings, Medusa was once a young woman in Athena's temple. White columns, cold marble, oil lamps, and clean water. Then the sea god's attention finds her like a storm that doesn't ask permission, a violation in a sacred place, and afterward, the punishment falls on the wrong head. Athena's anger twists Medusa into a warning, hair into snakes, gaze into weapon, humanity into curse. Sometimes I sit with that part and feel a quiet rage, the kind that doesn't shout, because it's so human in the worst way. A world that harms the vulnerable for what the powerful did and calls it justice. So when Perseus steps into the cave, he isn't only approaching a monster, he's approaching the end point of a curse, a face turned into a shield, and the cave keeps dripping. Plink, plink, time, counting down in water. He stands there, listening, until the silence begins to feel like a hand on the back of his neck. Then he moves again, careful, deliberate, letting the mirror lead, because courage, right now, would be the dumbest thing he could bring. Perseus stands in the throat of the cave and feels the darkness press in like damp cloth, not choking him, not yet, just touching every patch of exposed skin with a cold, patient curiosity. The bronze shield in his hands catches what little light the entrance offers and throws it forward in a thin, trembling ribbon. In that ribbon, the cave reveals itself in fragments, a slick wall, a low shelf of rock, a scatter of pale bones that might be goat or man or something that stopped being either. His own face swims in the metal, broken by scratches, eyes wider than he wants to admit. Each time his breath leaves him, it fogs the shield for a heartbeat, turning his reflection into a ghost. He wipes it with the edge of his sleeve, slow, careful, as if even fabric could be too loud. Drip, drip, drip. That steady sound begins to feel like a spell. You know that hypnotic kind of repetition? When the same small noise happens often enough that your mind starts to ride it like a boat riding a gentle wave. Perseus tries to use it. He lets his steps match it. 1 foot forward, pause, drip. Another foot, pause, drip. The floor changes under him. Near the mouth of the cave, the rock is rough, sharp enough to scrape the soles of his sandals. Deeper in, it becomes slick, worn smooth by water and time, like the tongue of a stone animal. His foot slips once, just a fraction, and his stomach lurches with the sudden thought, too fast, too loud, too real. What if the sound wakes them? He freezes so hard his muscles ache. He listens. A long, held moment. Only the drip, only the hush, only the soft, dry sliding. Again, barely there. It's close now. Not imagination close. Close like breath on a neck. Perseus adjusts the helmet at his side. The helm of shadow, the one that can swallow him from sight. Cold metal bites his fingers. He doesn't put it on yet. He wants to keep a thread of control, wants to see his own hands, wants to feel human. It's a foolish desire, tender and foolish, and I can't help feeling for him in that moment, because when you're terrified, sometimes you cling to the smallest familiar thing. A smell, a texture, the ability to see your own skin. He inches forward until the reflected ribbon of light reaches a shape that doesn't belong to the cave. A curve, a shoulder, pale skin, almost luminous in the mirror. Perseus's throat tightens. He angles the shield, not daring to raise his eyes above it. The reflected image grows clearer in the bronze. A woman, sleeping. Her breathing is shallow, slow, like someone resting after long pain. Her lips are parted slightly. A line of drool glistens at the corner of her mouth, delicate, ordinary, almost unbearably normal. For a heartbeat, Perseus's mind stutters. This is it? This is the monster that turns men to stone? Then the hair shifts, not with wind, with its own will. Snakes, not huge, not theatrical, not like the carvings on temple doors. Real snakes, thick-bodied, muscular, glossy as wet rope, each one moving with a different impatience. One slides across her cheek, scales whispering against skin. Another coils near her ear. A third lifts its head, tongue flicking, tasting the air as if it can smell fear. Perseus's pulse bangs in his ears so loudly, he worries the snakes will hear it. He swallows, and the swallow is a small thunder inside his skull. He makes himself look at the mirror again, not at the cave itself. Reflection, Athena said. Let reflection take the danger. In the bronze he sees more shapes now. 2 more bodies, heavier, sprawled farther back. The sisters, Stheno and Euryale. Their forms are similar, but something about them feels harder, less vulnerable. Even asleep, they seem coiled, as if they could wake and strike without needing to think. Their snake hair lies tangled, a nest of living cords. Perseus's fingers tighten around the curved blade. The sword's edge looks almost blue in the dim light, a sliver of cold certainty. He remembers the Graia's toothless laughter. He remembers Polydectes' satisfied smile. He remembers his mother's hand on his arm. All of it funnels down into this one movement. Step, pause, drip. He draws closer until the mirror shows Medusa's neck in clean, terrifying detail. The curve where jaw meets throat. The place where a pulse flickers under skin. A mortal pulse. The thought lands in him like a stone. She can die. He doesn't know if that makes it easier or worse. Because if she can die, then she can suffer. He hesitates. Just a breath-long hesitation. And in that breath, his mind does a strange thing. It tries to picture Medusa awake, not as a weapon, but as a person. Does she dream? Does she dream of sunlight? Does she dream of hands that touch gently instead of grabbing? Does she dream of a face that doesn't make others recoil? It's a soft, human wondering, and it hurts. It hurts because it makes what he's about to do feel like more than a task. Then a snake lifts its head higher. It turns, slowly, as if it senses the shape of his heat, tongue flicking. A tiny hiss, thin as a needle. Perseus's hesitation snaps. Fear does what fear always does. It chooses for you. He raises the blade. His hands shake. Not wildly, not enough to ruin him, but with that fine tremor that comes when adrenaline floods your veins and your body becomes a bowstring pulled too tight. He tries to steady his wrists. He tries to remember every instruction. He tries not to breathe, and he swings. The blade meets flesh with a sound that is not dramatic, not a loud chop. A wet, soft slice, like cutting through thick fruit. A brief resistance, then release. For an instant, Perseus doesn't understand what happened. His mind is slow, stunned, like a door that won't open. Then the reflected image in the shield changes, and the cave fills with a smell that punches him in the face. Blood, warm, metallic, alive. Medusa's body jerks once, a sudden involuntary movement, as if her muscles are trying to wake her after the fact. The snakes erupt, whipping, writhing, hissing, in a chorus that raises every hair on Perseus's arms. Some strike at the air, some bite at the severed neck, confused, furious, starving for something to blame. Perseus's stomach turns. He tastes bile. He forces himself to keep moving, because stopping is death. He grabs the head. He He does not look at it directly. He keeps it wrapped in the edge of his cloak, eyes pinned to the bronze reflection and the stone floor. The head is heavier than he expects. He can feel the weight of skull through cloth, the slickness of blood soaking fabric, warmth fading already into a colder reality. The snakes, even severed, are still alive, coiling and uncoiling against the cloak, their scales rasping softly like dry reeds. Then the impossible happens. From the stump of Medusa's neck, blood does not only spill, it surges. It pushes outward as if it has purpose, as if it has been waiting. Perseus steps back, startled, and the shield catches it all in trembling bronze. Something rises from the pooling red, a shape unfolding, slick and dark at first, then pale as moonbone. Wings, huge, wet wings that beat once and fling droplets across the cave wall like crimson rain. A horse, no, not exactly a horse. Something older than that word, something made of power and terror, lifts its head and screams. The sound is piercing, raw, newborn and furious. Pegasus, and beside it, another figure emerges, a man-child of sorts, already armed, already bristling with fate. Chrysaor, the one with the golden sword, born from violence like a cruel joke. Perseus's mouth falls open. He can't help it. Even fear pauses in confusion. For a heartbeat, the cave is a womb and a slaughterhouse at the same time. Blood steams on cold. Stone. The newborn winged horse shakes itself, and the motion is so strong it sends ripples through the puddles. The air fills with the smell of iron and wet feathers. It's disgusting. It's magnificent. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel small, like an ant watching a mountain move. Then movement behind, a roar, not from the newborn creatures, from the sisters waking. Sthenos' eyes open in the mirror, and even seeing them reflected makes Perseus's skin crawl. They are bright, furious, ancient. Uriel's mouth opens, and a wail pours out, a sound of grief turned into a weapon. It shakes the cave, shakes Perseus's teeth in their sockets. They see Medusa's body. They understand. They do not hesitate. Immortality gives them no time for bargaining, no need for caution. They lunge. Perseus's heart slams once, hard enough to hurt. He yanks the helmet of shadow onto his head. The world dims, not like closing your eyes, like the air itself becomes thicker, darker, swallowing him. He looks down and sees nothing of himself. No hands, no feet. Only the shield floating before him, only the sword's edge glinting faintly, as if held by an invisible will. He feels a surge of relief so sharp it almost makes him dizzy, invisible, hidden. But the sisters don't stop. They crash into the space where he was, claws scraping stone, snake hair thrashing like a storm-tossed nest. They smell the blood. They hear his breath. They sense him the way predators sense warmth. Perseus makes his breathing tiny. He holds the sack open with unseen hands, fumbling, cloak slipping, snakes writhing. For a terrifying second, he thinks he'll drop the head and doom himself in the very act of escaping. He forces the head into the sack. The bag bulges, alive with movement. A hiss leaks out like steam from a crack. He cinches it tight. Uriel shrieks again, and the sound is so full of mourning that for a moment Perseus feels like a thief running from a funeral. Medusa wasn't only a monster to them. She was a sister, a mortal sister, a fragile thing they could not protect from. Fate. Perseus backs away, steps light, guided by the faint, reflected glow in the shield. He bumps a stone column and hears it scrape. The sisters whirl toward the sound. He holds still, invisible, while snake hair lashes the air inches from where his face would be. You know that kind of terror? When danger passes so close, you can almost feel it brush your eyelashes, and you're afraid even your thoughts might make noise. It's like that. His body becomes a statue of restraint. Then he moves again, slow, careful, out of the cave, toward the mouth where wind and salt air wait like mercy. Behind him the sisters roar and claw. They cannot see him, but they can wreck the world around them. Rock chips fly, dust blooms. The cave groans as if it might collapse from their fury. Perseus reaches the entrance and feels night air strike his skin, cool, clean, alive. He doesn't stop. He runs. His feet hit the gray ground outside, and the winged sandals blessed, ridiculous things lift him with every stride. Not full flight yet, but lightness, a gravity that loosens its grip. He bounds over stones, over statues, over the frozen faces of men who made the mistake he is refusing to make. The sisters burst from the cave, wailing, and the sound follows him like a curse. He can't see them now, not safely, so he trusts the helmet, trusts the air, trusts the gods who handed him these tools as if they were lending a knife to a child. He leaps. He feels the ground drop away. Wind catches him. For a moment his stomach floats, weightless, like the instant before you fall in a dream. Then he is truly airborne. The world below becomes a map of grays and blacks. The statues shrink into pale teeth. The cave mouth becomes a dark dot. The sisters, raging on the rim, become moving shadows that can't reach him. Perseus flies out over the sea. Salt spray rises to meet him, cool against his lips. The moon lays a silver road across the water, and for a moment, despite everything, it is beautiful. Beautiful in that cold way that doesn't care if you're a murderer or a hero. Beautiful like a knife edge gleaming. He clutches the sack close to his chest. Inside, the head shifts. Snakes scrape fabric. A hiss slips out. Quiet now, like a lullaby made of danger. Perseus doesn't look inside. He doesn't need to. He can feel the weight of what he carries. A curse wrapped in cloth. A face that makes the world stop. And as he flies, the sea wind dries the blood on his cloak until it stiffens, crusty and dark. He tastes iron every time he licks his lips. His arms shake with exhaustion, not from flying those sandals do the work, but from the way terror burns through muscles, from the way the mind clenches for too long and forgets how to loosen. He keeps going, over water, over darkness, over the silent, indifferent curve of the earth. Behind him, far away, the wailing fades, but inside the sack, the snakes keep whispering. Perseus presses his palm against the knotted cord until his fingers cramp. He tells himself he did what had to be done. He tells himself that over and over, like counting sheep. Yet each time the sack twitches, a small shiver runs through him, and the night feels a little colder than the sea can explain. The sea beneath Perseus keeps rolling as if nothing has happened. Wave after wave, dark backs rising, breaking, folding into foam. It's strange how the world continues when a life has been severed. The moon still lays its pale path on the water. The wind still tastes of salt. The stars still watch without blinking. Perseus flies low at first, because flying high feels like being too visible, too close to the god's gaze. His sandals skim the air above the swells. Now and then, a gust lifts spray into his face, cold needles of seawater that sting the cuts on his lips where he bit down too hard. He blinks, and the droplets cling to his lashes, turning the world into a soft blur for a moment. He welcomes the blur. It hides the sharpness of thought. I always find it eerie, honestly. Eerie in the most quiet way, how exhaustion changes fear. Fear is loud when you first meet it. Later it becomes heavy. It settles into your shoulders. It makes your hands ache. It makes your eyelids droop, even when you're still running from something that wants you. Dead. Perseus keeps the helmet of shadow on. He doesn't know if the sisters can still track him across the sea. He doesn't want to test their patience. He lets the darkness of the helm wrap him like a hood. And it's odd. It feels almost comforting. as if invisibility is a blanket, a dangerous blanket, a blanket that belongs to someone else. The sack with Medusa's head is tied tight and slung close, held against his ribs. Every so often it gives a small pulse, a twitch, snakes shifting. It's like carrying a bag of sleeping eels. Warmth is gone now. The head is cooling, yet the power inside it, that power does not cool. If anything, it feels sharper, concentrated, like venom thickening. Hours pass, or maybe it's only minutes stretched by adrenaline. Time is slippery in the night. Perseus sees the coastline appear as a darker line against darkness. Cliffs, dunes, a suggestion of land that smells different from the sea dust, dry stone, something faintly bitter like crushed herbs. He aims for it. The moment he crosses from open water to land, the wind changes. It loses its wet edge. It becomes a dry thing that scrapes the throat. He descends, feet brushing the tops of low shrubs that crackle under the wake of his flight. He lands, briefly, just long enough to steady himself, then lifts again. His legs want to run even when his feet are not on ground. His body has forgotten how to rest. Below him the earth is a quilt of shadow. In some places it is desert smooth, pale, empty. In others it is rocky highland, ridged and folded like old skin. He sees no villages at first, only the occasional small fire far away, a dot like a fallen star. He avoids those fires. He doesn't want eyes. He doesn't want questions. He doesn't want anyone to speak his name. Names are dangerous. Names pull you into stories. Stories trap. As he flies, he feels the night air cool, then warm, then cool again, as he crosses different currents. His cheeks numb, his ears ring from wind. Inside his mouth, the taste of iron fades, replaced by the stale dryness of fear. He tries to swallow, and finds his throat tight, as if it has been clenched for hours. It hurts. He swallows anyway. He forces saliva to move. He forces his body to remember it is alive. When dawn begins to threaten the horizon, only a bruised gray, not true light. Yet Perseus finally dares to descend into a valley, where tall stones jut up like broken teeth. There is a hush here. No birds, no insects, just a thin wind weaving through rock. He lands between two pillars of stone and pulls the helmet off. Instantly, the world feels too open. He can see his hands again. His skin looks pale in the pre-dawn. He flexes his fingers and feels the stiffness of dried blood on his knuckles from gripping the sack and the sword. He wipes them on his cloak, and the fabric scratches, crusty. He sits, not gracefully. He drops down like a man who has been holding himself upright with pure will. His back hits the stone, and cold seeps into his spine. He closes his eyes for a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, because minds are cruel when you finally give them space, images come. Medusa's sleeping mouth, the sudden wet slice, the newborn scream of Pegasus, the sister's wail. Perseus opens his eyes. Again, fast, as if he can outrun memory by keeping his eyes busy. He looks around, sees nothing but stone. Safe, for now. He considers eating. He has no appetite. His stomach feels like a fist. Still, he pulls a small piece of dried bread from his pouch. It is hard, stale. He chews slowly. Each bite is work. The bread turns to paste in his mouth, and he has to swallow with effort. It sits heavy. He drinks from a skin of water. The water tastes faintly of leather. It runs down his throat and makes him shiver as it hits his belly. Cold and real. He should move. He knows that. Rest is dangerous. Rest is when nightmares find you. So he moves. Perseus rises, and the stone behind him keeps his warmth for a moment, like an unfriendly hand. He hoists the sack again. It thumps against his side. He grimaces. It feels wrong to carry death like baggage. He flies on as the sky brightens. Sunlight begins to gather, cautious at first, then stronger. Perseus keeps his eyes down, not from fear of Medusa's gaze now, but from fear of being seen by people. When daylight comes, the world gains witnesses. At midday he sees something that makes him slow, a giant shape on the horizon. Not a mountain exactly, a figure, a man of stone and shadow, sitting among cliffs, as if the earth itself has taken human form. Atlas. Perseus has heard of him, of course. Everyone has. The Titan who was punished to hold up the sky, shoulders forever braced under the weight of heaven. Perseus feels an odd ache at the thought, a being forced to carry what cannot be carried, a punishment that is not pain in a moment, but pain stretched across eternity. It makes the air around Atlas feel heavy, like grief. As Perseus approaches, the landscape changes. Trees appear tough, twisted things with leaves, like dull knives. Vines crawl over rocks. There is the smell of sap and sun-warmed bark. He hears insects now, thin buzzing, and it feels almost comforting. That small, ordinary noise. Life, still here. Atlas's garden is rumored to exist near his realm, a place of golden fruit, guarded and gleaming. Perseus doesn't want the fruit, not really, but he wants passage. He wants a safe route. He wants, in the deepest part of himself, someone older to tell him what to do next. He lands at the edge of a grove. The ground is softer here, packed earth and fallen leaves. His sandals sink a little. He feels the give under his weight, and it feels good to feel something that isn't stone. He walks a few steps and the leaves crunch softly. Sunlight filters through branches in thin shafts, dust motes floating in them like tiny drifting stars. Then a voice, low, rumbling, the kind of voice that sounds like rock shifting in the earth. "Who comes to my land?" Perseus turns without raising his eyes too far. Atlas stands among the trees, taller than any man, muscles like carved cliffs. His beard is thick, tangled with leaves. His eyes are deep and tired, the tiredness of someone who has watched ages pass and still cannot sit down. Above him, clouds seem to cling, as if the sky remembers its debtor. Perseus feels suddenly small, not just physically, story small, like a brief line in a much longer song. "I'm Perseus," he says, and his own voice surprises him with how hoarse it is. "I seek shelter, only for a moment." Atlas's eyes narrow. He steps closer, and the ground seems to respond, trembling faintly. Perseus can smell him, earth, sweat, old rain trapped in stone. Atlas's gaze flicks to the sack at Perseus's side. "That," Atlas says, and there is a bitterness in the word, "is not a traveler's burden." Perseus's fingers tighten on the cord. He lies, he tries. "It's a trophy," he says. "A gift, perhaps, for one who offers kindness." Atlas laughs. It is not a happy sound. It's the sound of boulders grinding. "I have known gifts," Atlas says, "and I have known the kind of men who arrive with gifts and leave with theft." He reaches out, huge hand hovering as if to snatch the sack. Perseus steps back, instinctive, protective. In that moment, Perseus understands something simple and sharp. Atlas is powerful. Atlas is weary. Atlas is not safe. A weary giant can crush you without meaning to. A weary giant can decide you are an inconvenience. Perseus's mind races, not clever like a scholar, clever like an animal trapped in a corner. He could fly away, yes, but Atlas might still chase. Atlas might still block him. Atlas might still harm him out of spite or suspicion. Perseus feels the weight of Medusa's head at his side. He feels it like a key, a terrible key, and he makes a decision that tastes like ash. "I was warned," Perseus says softly, voice steadying in a strange calm. "I was told you would refuse me, Titan, that you would turn away a guest and keep your treasures for yourself." Atlas's face hardens. Anger flares in his eyes like stormlight. He moves forward. Perseus's hands are already working. He unties the cord. The sack loosens. A faint hiss spills out. Atlas leans closer, curious despite himself. Perseus does not look at the head. He doesn't need to. He turns his own face away, eyes fixed on the ground, and lifts the sack toward Atlas like a lantern. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then Atlas's eyes widen. His mouth opens as if to speak, but the words die. His skin, once warm with living color, begins to pale. Not like fear pale, like stone. It travels fast, across his cheeks, down his thick neck, over the ridges of his shoulders. His huge hands stiffen mid-reach, fingers frozen like clawed branches. His beard becomes rock, leaves locked in place forever. His eyes, still open, still filled with surprise and rage, and something like betrayal, become dull mineral. The change is silent. That's what gets me. No cracking, no dramatic thunder, just a quiet, settling, as if the world has decided to make him part of it. Atlas becomes a mountain. His back arches upward into a range of stone. His shoulders broaden into cliffs. His arms extend into ridges. His head rises into a peak that catches the first thin cloud of afternoon. The sky, which he once held with living strength, now rests on him as if he has always been there. Perseus lowers the sack, shaking. He reties it with fumbling fingers. His stomach twists. He whispers, without meaning to, "I'm sorry." The words are small, swallowed by wind. He leaves quickly. He cannot stand to look at what he has done. He launches into the air, and the grove falls away beneath him. And the new mountain that was once Atlas sits there, immense, indifferent, holding up the sky with the same silent obedience as any other mountain. As he flies on, the day begins to tilt toward evening. Shadows lengthen. The world cools. Perseus follows the edge of a coastline again, because coastlines give direction, and direction feels like sanity. Then he sees it. A city in the distance, pale walls catching the dying light. And beyond the city, on a rocky outcrop that juts over the sea, a figure chained. Even from far away, the scene punches a hole in the calm of the evening. A girl, no, a young woman standing with arms stretched wide, wrists bound by iron. Her hair whips in the wind. Her skin is bright against the dark rock. Below her the sea churns, restless, as if something enormous is moving under the surface. Perseus slows in midair, hovering. The wind pushes against him, trying to shove him away from the cliff. He looks, and though he is still high enough to be safe, he feels that old prickling sense that stories are reaching for him again. The woman's head turns. She cannot see him. He is distant. A speck, perhaps, but her posture is the posture of someone who has run out of hope and is now simply waiting, waiting for the sea, waiting for teeth, waiting for the end. Perseus's chest tightens, not with heroism, with recognition, because he knows what it is to be offered up to a monster to satisfy someone else's fear. He knows what it is to have your fate decided by people with clean hands. He circles once, keeping distance. He watches the sea. A dark shape rolls under the surface, huge as a ship, then vanishes again. Foam blooms where it passed. Perseus grips the sack. The snakes inside shift, restless, as if they can sense another feast of terror nearby. He swallows. His throat feels dry again. He could keep flying. He could turn away. He has his own mission, his own mother, his own king to punish. Yet the sight of the chained woman stays in his eyes like an afterimage, and the sea below keeps moving, as if counting down. Somewhere in that churning water, something inhales, slowly, and the sound carries up the cliff, like a sigh meant for her alone. Perseus holds still in the air, feeling the evening settle, and he realizes his next choice will change more than his own story. Perseus hovers in the wind above the cliff and listens before he moves. The air tastes sharp up here, salt and cold stone like the sea has climbed into his mouth. Each gust slides under his armor, finds the sweat on his skin, and turns it into a shiver that crawls along his spine. The winged sandals keep him afloat with a steady, patient lift, yet his stomach still sways, the way it does on a ship when you can't see land. Below him, a young woman stands chained to a slab of rock at the edge of the world. Iron cuffs bite her wrists. Her fingers are pale, swollen at the joints from pressure. When the wind tugs her hair, it lashes her face and clings to her lips with wet strands of sea spray. She looks toward the horizon, not the sky, because she is waiting for something that comes from water, not from clouds. Perseus lowers himself until his feet find the gritty surface of the cliff. Stone scrapes faintly under his sandals. He pulls off the helmet of shadow, no tricks now, and lets her see his face. Honestly, he wants her to see that he's human, because if you've been tied up as bait, every stranger looks like a new kind of predator. Her head snaps toward him. She blinks, hard, as if the wind has thrown sand in her eyes. "Are you real?" she asks, voice dry and thin. "I'm real," Perseus says. "My name is Perseus, Andromeda," she answers automatically, like the name is part of the ritual. Then fear rushes back into her features, quick and sharp. "Go," she whispers, then says it louder when she thinks he might not obey. "Please, leave. It's coming." Perseus follows her gaze. The sea below the cliff has patches that look too dark, as if the water has bruises. A line of foam appears where nothing should disturb it. Then, the rock under his feet trembles, just slightly, a low vibration that travels into his ankles and up his bones. It reminds him of a door being pushed open very slowly in a house that should be empty. "Why are you here?" he asks her, gentle, almost embarrassed to ask when the answer seems written in the chains. Andromeda's mouth twists. "You know that feeling," she says, "when your life becomes a story people tell at dinner, and you're the piece they pass around?" She lifts her cuffed hands, and the iron scrapes with a sound that makes Perseus's teeth hurt. "My mother opened her mouth." She speaks in fragments, because fear makes memories come out crooked. "Cassiopeia," she says. "She was proud. Everyone told her she was beautiful, so she believed it like law. She said she was more beautiful than the sea nymphs." A breath, shaky, as if the gods are supposed to smile when you insult them. Perseus feels anger bloom, familiar and bitter anger at vanity. Yes, but more at the way vanity spills onto someone who never asked for it. And Poseidon answered. Andromeda whispers. "Floods. A monster. Boats broken like toys. People dragged under. An oracle said the sea would be quiet only if I was given to it." Her eyes glisten, not with melodrama, with exhaustion. "They didn't chain me here because they hated me," she says, "and that is the darkest part. They cried when they did it." She swallows hard. "My father kissed my forehead like I was going to bed." The wind shifts. A colder gust comes off the water, carrying a rotten smell fish left too long in sun, seaweed, something sour and animal. Perseus hears the ocean surge and suck, the sound of heavy water being displaced. Then the surface breaks. The monster rises like a thought you can't push away. It has the length of a serpent and the weight of a ship. Its neck is ridged and slick, dark as wet slate. Its head opens like a crocodile's nightmare, jaw stretching too wide, teeth uneven, some long and needle-thin, some broken stumps, all of them made for tearing. Its eyes are pale, almost milk-white, and when they fix on Andromeda there is no cruelty there, only hunger. Andromeda's breath turns into a small, involuntary whimper. Perseus steps between her and the edge, as if his body could be a wall. He draws his curved blade, but in his hand, the sword suddenly feels like a dinner knife. Steel won't be enough. He knows it before the first strike. Still, he launches forward because sometimes you have to let your fear spend itself. The winged sandals lift him over the monster's snapping mouth. Heat and stench rush up, damp and foul. He slashes behind its eye. The blade bites, then skids. The hide is thick, rubbery. A slow, black blood seeps out, heavy as oil. The monster jerks. A wave slams the cliff, and spray stings Perseus's face. Its jaws snap shut, where his leg had been a heartbeat earlier. The sound is brutal, like a door slammed in a storm. Perseus retreats, breathing hard. Andromeda squeezes her eyes shut and turns her face toward the rock, faithful to his earlier warning, even though he hasn't explained it yet. Her shoulders tremble. She is trying not to look at anything that can end her. Perseus's hand finds the sack at his side. The cord is rough under his fingers, stiff with dried blood. Inside, the snakes shift and the fabric rasps softly like something alive in a coffin. His stomach tightens. This isn't a gift. It's a horror he can aim. "Don't look," he shouts to Andromeda. "Not at me. Not at the water. Keep your eyes on the stone." The monster surges again, rising higher, jaws widening for the final lunge. Perseus turns his head away and lifts his shield, using its bronze curve as a mirror. He works the knot with shaking fingers. For a second, the cord sticks, and he feels panic spike raw, hot, because one mistake here means a girl is eaten, and a hero becomes a footnote. The sack opens just enough. A sliver of Medusa's face appears in the shield's reflection-pale cheek, still skin, the suggestion of snakes coiled in frozen fury. Then one eye opens. It doesn't blink with emotion. It simply sees. The monster freezes mid-lunge. A gray bloom spreads across its slick hide, like frost racing over a pond. Scales harden into stone plates. The wet shine goes dull. Its open mouth turns pale and dead, teeth becoming rock in an instant of eternal hunger. Even the water dripping from its jaw seems to hesitate before it falls. Perseus snaps the sack shut and ties it fast, 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 fingers clumsy from adrenaline. He lands beside Andromeda and bends forward, hands on his knees, breathing like he has run for miles. The wind cools the sweat on his neck. His legs tremble with the aftershock. "Is it gone?" Andromeda asks, voice small. Perseus looks out. The monster stands half submerged, now a statue rising from the sea like a jagged new reef. Waves slap it and break white along its stone flank. "It's stopped," he says. "It won't move again." He turns to her cuffs. The iron is thick, hammered to hold. He wedges his blade into the gap and uses the rock as leverage. Metal groans. A high screech that makes Andromeda flinch. Perseus strains until his arms burn. Snap, one cuff breaks. Her hand drops, numb, then tingles as blood returns, and she winces, flexing her fingers like she's learning them again. Snap, the second cuff yields. Andromeda stumbles forward. Perseus catches her without thinking. She is cold and lighter than he expects, all tension and exhaustion. For a moment she presses her forehead into his shoulder, and a single sob shakes through her, quick and silent, as if she's ashamed to make noise. Perseus just holds her until the tremor eases. When she pulls back, her eyes are wet. "I thought I would die here," she says, almost flat with disbelief, tasting the word die times like it belongs to someone else. Perseus nods once. He understands that strange emptiness after terror. When your body hasn't learned, it can stop bracing. Before they leave the cliff entirely, Perseus guides her to a hollow where the rock curves inward, a place the wind doesn't strike as hard. He sits her down with care, like she is something bruised. The stone is still cold, even after a day of sun, and she flinches when her bare legs touch it. Perseus crouches and rubs his hands together, then offers his palms near her fingers, not touching, just sharing warmth. You know that small, awkward kindness when you don't know what to say, so you offer heat. Andromeda studies his hands as if she's never seen hands that weren't holding a chain. Her breathing slows, then catches again when she notices the sack at his side. The fabric shifts once, the faint rasp of scales beneath. Her eyes widen. "What is that?" she asks. Perseus hesitates. He feels the old nausea rise, the memory of Medusa's cavern, the wet, sweet stench of decay, the way his own heart sounded too loud when he lifted the blade. He keeps his voice low. "A thing you must never look at," he says. "A face that ends living movement." Andromeda swallows. She turns her head away from the sack, as if even the idea is dangerous. "I won't," she whispers. I won't." Perseus watches the sea from the corner of his eye. The statue monster stands there, rigid, caught forever in the act of taking. A wave breaks against it and throws lace-like foam into the air. The foam drifts down and melts back into water, as if the sea is trying to pretend nothing happened. That's what the world does, he thinks. It absorbs horror and keeps moving. The sun slides lower. Light turns copper, then bruised pink, then a dim gold that makes Andromeda's skin look almost warm again. For a moment, it's painfully beautiful. Perseus feels that strange ache how the sky can be gentle while humans do monstrous things. He has always found that contrast unsettling. It's like a lullaby sung over a grave. Andromeda pulls the cloak tighter. Her fingers, once numb, now sting and throb as blood continues to return. She flexes them slowly, winces, then exhales through her nose. "I can feel them again," she says, and the relief in her voice is so simple, it makes Perseus's chest tighten. He nods, then asks, "Can you walk?" She tries to stand. Her knees wobble. She laughs once under her breath, an embarrassed sound, and Perseus offers his arm. She leans on him, not heavily, but enough that he feels her weight and realizes how long she's been holding herself upright on sheer will. They start along the path, and the first steps are awkward. Her feet search for purchase on rough stone. Tiny pebbles roll under her toes, and she hisses softly when one edge cuts. Perseus slows his pace to match hers. He points out the flatter places, the safer ledges. He keeps his body between her and the drop, instinctively, like his shadow could shield her from the sea even now. As they descend, the air changes, less sharp, more dust, more earth, the scent of scrub plants crushed underfoot. Torches flicker below, and smoke drifts upward in thin ribbons, carrying that comforting, bitter smell of burning wood. It makes Perseus think of his mother's hearth. For a heartbeat he sees Danae's hands, warm and steady, and the memory hits like a wave. "I'm still someone's son, not only a weapon." "We can't stay," he murmurs. "People will come." They move along the rocky path away from the edge. Perseus goes first, testing footholds, offering his hand. Andromeda follows, wrapped in his cloak, shoulders hunched against the wind. Every few steps, she pauses to breathe, and Perseus can feel how close she is to collapsing now that fear has loosened its grip. Voices rise ahead, torches, footsteps, a crowd gathered where the path meets the plain. Relief crashes into screams when they see her. A king pushes forward, face lined with worry, and takes Andromeda's hands as if afraid she will vanish. A queen follows, jeweled and pale, covering her mouth when she sees the raw marks on her daughter's wrists. Perseus stands slightly apart, the sack heavy at his side, as people stare, grateful, frightened, uncertain what kind of man carries a wrapped curse. The king bows, awkwardly, a ruler trying to be human. "You have saved my child," he says, voice rough. "My house is in your debt." Debt, Perseus feels the words settle on him like another weight. Still, he looks at Andromeda. She meets his eyes with a quiet steadiness that feels rarer than gold. "Come," the king says. "Rest. Eat. Let us honor you." Perseus wants to refuse. Then, Andromeda's fingers brush his arm, light as a feather, and he understands she cannot walk back into that palace alone tonight. He nods. "Just for tonight," he says. They begin the walk toward the city lights. Torches sway. Sand crunches underfoot. Behind them, the stone monster stands in the surf, already becoming scenery, already being claimed by waves and gulls and time. Perseus glances back once and feels a strange, quiet thought. Even terror, given time, turns into silence. He faces forward again. The sack at his side twitches softly, snakes shifting in cramped darkness, reminding him that silence is never permanent for long. The palace of Cepheus is bright from a distance, a cluster of warm light against the darkening coast. As Perseus and Andromeda approach, the city smells of cooked grain, oil lamps, and the sea carried in on evening wind. People crowd the streets in messy waves. They touch Andromeda's cloak as she passes, as if proving she's solid. They stare at Perseus's sword, his blood-stained hem, the strange sack hanging at his side, like a secret. Some murmur blessings. Some step back, wary, because humans can be grateful and frightened in the same breath. Inside the palace gates, sound changes. Stone walls soften the wind. Footsteps echo. Torches spit and hiss as resin burns. Perseus hears the quiet clink of jewelry, the rustle of linen, the quick whispering of servants who are trying to act calm in the presence of a miracle. Andromeda walks beside him with her shoulders drawn in, still braced for something to snatch her back. Every time a door opens suddenly, or a voice rises, her muscles tighten. Perseus notices it the way you notice a bird flinching at every shadow. He doesn't comment. He just stays close enough that she can feel the steadiness of another body. Cepheus leads them into a hall, where the air is warmer. A brazier glows at one end, and for the first time since the cliff, Andromeda's cheeks show the faint return of color. Servants bring water, a basin, warm and scented with herbs. Perseus watches Andromeda dip her hands into it. She winces when heat touches the raw marks on her wrists, then sighs, a long breath, as if pain is still preferable to cold chains. She rubs, gently, careful, eyes half closed. It looks like prayer. Perseus is offered wine. He takes a small sip and tastes honey and smoke. It slides down his throat and lands heavy in his stomach. He hasn't realized how hungry he is until he smells bread fresh, torn open, steam rising. His hands shake slightly as he breaks a piece. Adrenaline leaves the body the way tide leaves a shore, slow, reluctant, exposing everything it had covered. Now that the fighting is done, he feels hollow, tired, too aware of every bruise. Cepheus raises his hands for silence. His voice carries across the hall, heavy with ceremony. "Perseus, son of Danae," he says, and Perseus flinches slightly at hearing his mother's name spoken by strangers. "You have spared our kingdom and saved my daughter from death." He turns to the gathered nobles, the priests, the soldiers with their hands still on spear shafts. "This man is honored in my house." A cheer rises, then a nervous hush, because people are never sure how loud to be near gods and monsters. Cepheus continues, and here is the part Perseus feels in his ribs before he hears it, like the air itself tightening. "Andromeda," the king says, "was promised to another before this calamity." Whispers ripple. Perseus sees Andromeda's fingers curl into the edge of her cloak. "I declare that promise dissolved," Cepheus says, voice firm, "and I offer her hand to Perseus, if Perseus will accept." The hall goes still in that peculiar way, everyone listening, everyone already planning what story they will tell later. Perseus feels heat rise to his face. He did not come to Ethiopia for marriage. He came to survive. He came to get home. Yet his eyes find Andromeda, and he sees her watching him with that same steadiness from the plain. No pleading, no performance, only a quiet question. Will you leave me to face them alone? Honestly, in that moment he understands something about hero stories. They don't tell you about this part. They tell you about the swing of the sword. They skip the trembling human choices that come after. I will accept, Perseus says, not because he is swept up in applause, because he sees the trap of gratitude turning into another chain, and he wants to cut it clean. He wants Andromeda to belong to herself again, even if the path to that freedom runs through him. A wave of sound fills the hall. Servants scatter to prepare. Someone begins to sing. Food arrives in a rush. Meat, fruit, bowls of olives glistening with oil. People drink. They laugh too loudly, the way people laugh after surviving a storm. Andromeda is guided away to be washed, dressed, crowned with fresh garments instead of salt-stiff hair. When she leaves, Perseus feels an odd absence beside him, like the air has changed temperature. He takes a seat at the edge of the hall, away from the busiest circle, and rests his hand over the sack, a reflex, as if keeping the knot in place keeps the world from slipping. A man approaches. He is older than Perseus, with a sharp face and eyes that don't soften. His clothing is rich. His hands are clean, the hands of someone used to ordering others into danger. He stops and stares at Perseus's sword, then at the sack. His mouth curves. Not a smile, a claim. Perseus, he says, voice smooth. A hero. Then he turns his gaze toward the corridor Andromeda disappeared into. Andromeda has long been promised to me. The hall's warmth seems to dim. Perseus studies him. And you are? Phineus, the man replies, as if the name is enough. He steps closer. The smell of wine on his breath is sharp, sour. I have waited. I have prepared gifts. I have spoken vows. His eyes narrow. And now a stranger arrives and takes what is mine. Perseus feels a familiar chill. It is the chill of Polydectes, the chill of entitlement, dressed as honor. She was chained to a cliff. Perseus says quietly, "You did not come." Phineus's jaw tightens. He leans in. "You did not save her for love," he murmurs. "You saved her for glory, for reward." His gaze flicks to the nobles watching. "They will sing your name." Then his eyes cut back. "But she is mine." Perseus does not rise. He keeps his voice low, because raising your voice turns a threat into a show. "I do not want your fight," he says. Andromeda will choose. Phineus's nostrils flare. For a heartbeat his face twitches, and Perseus sees something raw, fear of humiliation, fear of losing status. Then the mask settles back. "We will see," Phineus says softly, and he walks away with the calm of a man planning violence. Andromeda returns. She is dressed in pale linen that falls in clean lines, hair combed and braided, a simple circlet set on her brow. If you didn't know, if you hadn't seen the raw iron marks, you might think she has always lived in soft rooms. Yet Perseus sees the tightness around her mouth. He sees how her eyes sweep the hall, mapping exits like a hunted animal. When she reaches him, she pauses. Her fingers brush the scarred skin at her wrist, then drop. "Is it true?" she asks quietly. Perseus nods. "Yes." Andromeda exhales. Not joy, relief. Something like a door opening to fresh air after months in a sealed room. "I don't know what to feel," she admits. Then she looks at him directly. "But I know I don't want to be taken as a thing again." Perseus hears the honesty and feels it settle deep. "Then you won't be," he says, and he means it as a vow. Not to her father, not to the hall, but to the quiet person inside her who has been screaming. The marriage rites begin. Priests speak. Wine is poured. Hands are washed again. Ritual cleansing. As if water can rinse away the taste of sacrifice, Perseus stands beside Andromeda, and for a brief moment, the hall feels almost peaceful, like the world is pretending it can be ordinary. Then, the doors burst open. Metal rings. Men surge in. Armed spears, swords, shields catching torchlight. Their faces are tight, with anger and excitement, that dangerous mix that makes people reckless. Phineus steps forward among them, eyes bright now, no longer masked. He points. "That woman is mine," he says, voice loud enough to slice through music. "And that man is a thief." The hall erupts. Nobles scream and scramble back. Servants drop trays. A goblet hits stone and shatters. Wine spreading like dark blood. Soldiers of Cepheus hesitate, caught between loyalty to their king and fear of civil spill. Andromeda's hand grips Perseus's arm so hard it hurts. Perseus feels her trembling. For a heartbeat, he is back on the cliff, hearing the sea inhale. Only now the monster is human. Perseus steps forward, placing himself slightly in front of her. "Stop," he says, voice low, heavy. "You came too late." Phineus laughs once, harsh. He lifts his sword. "I came when the prize was already unwrapped." Steel flashes. Perseus blocks, pivots, and feels the press of bodies closing in around him. His hand goes to the sack. He hates that it comes to this. He hates that his answer to human greed is a monster's gaze. But the hall is shrinking. Blades are flashing. Closer. A man lunges, and Perseus feels the scrape of a point along his forearm. A line of heat that turns into blood. "Close your eyes," he says to Andromeda, urgent but steady. "Turn your face to the floor. Do not look." Andromeda obeys instantly. She presses her forehead to his shoulder, eyes shut tight, hands gripping his cloak like an anchor. Perseus turns his head away and lifts the shield again, using its bronze curve. He loosens the knot. Phineus sees the movement and hesitates, just a fraction. "What is that?" he spits. Perseus does not answer. He opens the sack just enough for the reflection to catch the truth. Medusa's eye opens in the bronze. The nearest attacker freezes mid-swing. Stone crawls over his arm, his face, his open mouth. Another man turns to run and becomes a statue in the act. One foot lifted, terror carved into his features forever. A third raises his shield, and the shield turns heavy and gray as his hands become rock around the grip. The hall fills with a new sound, silence, interrupted by the soft rasp of flesh becoming stone, like sand settling. Phineus shouts, "Don't look." Too late. His own men are trapped by curiosity, by panic, by the simple human mistake of glancing toward danger. One by one, they become sculptures scattered among overturned tables and spilled fruit, frozen in violent poses that now seem almost pathetic. Perseus feels his heart pounding. He wants to slam the sack shut. He forces himself to be careful, because care is the only thing between weapon and disaster. "Come." He tilts the opening away. As he closes it, ties it tight, and finally lets himself breathe. When he looks up carefully, away from the sack half the hall is stone. A man's face is frozen in a scream. Another's fingers are hardened around a dagger. Torchlight flickers over gray skin that used to be warm. Phineus is still moving. He has turned his head away at the last moment, eyes squeezed shut, hands trembling. He is on his knees now, sword fallen from his grip. You carry that," he whispers, voice breaking. "That curse." Perseus steps toward him. He does not raise his sword. He could kill him. It would be simple. Yet Perseus is tired of simple. He is tired of blood being the easiest answer. "Leave," Perseus says. "Walk out of this hall and never return." Phineas scrambles, backward, palms slipping on wine, then turns and runs, head down, refusing to see what his hunger created. The doors slam behind him. Silence settles. Only the crackle of torches remains. Somewhere, a child begins to cry, thin and shocked. Andromeda lifts her head slowly, her eyes open carefully, searching Perseus's face first. "Is it over?" she asks. Perseus nods. "It's over," he says, though his voice is rough, because he knows over is a temporary word. Cepheus stands frozen, staring at the statues of men who were alive minutes ago. Cassiopeia covers her mouth again, horror and relief mixing in her eyes. Priests whisper prayers with shaking hands. Perseus takes Andromeda's hand. Her fingers are cold, but steady now. They walk through the hall, stepping around stone bodies that will remain there as warnings and as burdens. As they pass, Perseus notices how stillness can be louder than screaming. Later, when the palace finally quiets, Perseus and Andromeda stand on a terrace above the sleeping city. Night air is cool, scented with distant salt and dying torch smoke. Stars hang overhead like scattered grains of pale sand. Far out, the stone monster is only a darker shape in darker water. Perseus feels the sack at his side like a second heartbeat. At last, he says, "We leave at dawn." Andromeda nods without argument, and that simple agreement feels like the first clean breath after a long time underwater. Below the terrace, shutters creak softly as wind tests them. A dog barks once, then falls silent, as if remembering it is safer to sleep. Perseus closes his eyes for a moment and lets the quiet settle over him like a blanket, thin, imperfect, still welcome. The night deepens. The sea keeps breathing, calm for now, as if it has already started forgetting the screams. Dawn does not arrive like a trumpet. It seeps in. A thin, gray milk of light slides along the edge of the sea and slowly stains the world visible again. Perseus stands in the palace courtyard while the city still sleeps, and he listens to the small sounds that survive night. An owl's last complaint, the soft clink of a chain somewhere, a servant's sandals whispering over stone. Andromeda comes out wrapped in a heavier cloak, hair braided tight so the wind can't yank it. She holds a small bundle to her chest, nothing grand, just a few cloths, a comb, a little pouch of dried figs, the kind of possessions that say, "I am leaving fast, and I don't want to think about what I'm abandoning." Cepheus meets them at the gate. He looks older in morning light, as if the night's horror drained the paint from his face. Cassiopeia is there too, eyes swollen from crying, makeup hastily smoothed, as if she can erase consequences by rearranging her features. She reaches for Andromeda, touches her cheek, and her hand trembles. "I'm sorry," she whispers, and it doesn't sound like a performance. It sounds like a woman finally hearing her own voice clearly and hating it. Andromeda doesn't pull away. She doesn't lean into the touch either. She simply stands still, accepting the apology the way you accept rain because you can't stop it and because you're too tired to fight the weather. Perseus clears his throat. The sound feels loud in the courtyard. "We go," he says, not harsh, just final. If they linger, gratitude turns into another ceremony, another trap. Cepheus nods and gestures toward a small cart of supplies, water skins, oil, cloth, a sack of grain. Not luxury survival. And this, he adds, holding out a ring set with a dark stone. "It belonged to my father. Proof, if you must show proof." Perseus takes it, feeling its cool weight press into his palm. A symbol can be a shield when tongues sharpen. They leave the palace as the sky lightens. Streets are empty except for dogs searching scraps and a few early fishermen with nets over shoulders. Some windows crack open as they pass, shutters creaking, faces peering out, sleepy, curious, already hungry for story. Perseus keeps his gaze forward. He holds Andromeda's hand, not in ceremony, just in steadiness. Her fingers are cold at first, then gradually warm as blood wakes in them. At the edge of the city, the smell of salt grows stronger. A ship waits Cepheus's fastest, its hull newly tarred, oars stacked like ribs along the side. Sailcloth hangs slack, damp from night mist. The deck smells of wet wood and fish, a smell Perseus finds oddly comforting because it is honest. No incense, no polished lies. As they board, Andromeda pauses at the gangplank. For a heartbeat, she stares out at the water, and Perseus can see the cliff in her mind, the chain marks, the monster's breath. She swallows hard. Then she steps onto the deck. When the ship pushes off, the city recedes. Torches become sparks, walls become a pale line. Andromeda stands at the stern and watches until the palace is only a shadow. She doesn't wave, she doesn't cry. She just watches, and something in her shoulders unclenches, a fraction at a time. You know that feeling, don't you? When you leave a place that hurt you, and relief comes first, and grief comes later. When your body finally believes you're safe enough to mourn. Wind catches the sail, canvas snaps, hard, and the sound makes Perseus flinch. His mind still expects screams. The ship leans, water slides along the hull, a steady shushing, like the sea is trying to lull them. Perseus sits near the mast with his back against the wood. He keeps the sack tucked close. He checks the knot again and again, until the rough fibers burn his skin. He thinks of Danae, his mother, in that dim room on Seriphos, hiding her fear like a coin tucked under the tongue. He thinks of Polydectes' smile, smooth, polite, predatory. He thinks of the way a king can make a threat sound like a compliment. A shiver crawls under Perseus's armor. Soon, he tells himself, soon, I will end that. Andromeda sits beside him after a while, settling carefully, as if the deck might bite. For a long time, she says nothing. Then, softly, she asks, does it ever stop? The feeling, she means. The waiting. The body braced for teeth. Perseus rubs a scar on his palm, a thin line from an old cut, the kind that never truly fades. No, he answers. Not completely. He stares at the horizon, but it changes. It becomes quieter, like a memory that no longer shouts. He pauses, then adds, because he wants her to feel less alone. Some days you forget it's there until a sound brings it back. Andromeda nods slowly, as if he has named something she thought was only hers. She smiles, small and tired. Thank you, she whispers, not for saving her from the monster, for telling the truth. That night, wind rises and the sea turns sharp. Spray lashes the deck, ropes creak, the mast groans like a living thing in pain. Darkness thickens, heavy as wet wool. Perseus stands near the rail, feet spread for balance, rain needling his face. He hears the crew's short commands, strained voices, and he forces his breath slow, in, out. He tastes salt and fear. Then, slowly, the storm slides past. Wind softens. Stars creep back, one by one, timid. Perseus sits on the wet deck, afterward, exhausted. Andromeda comes out and sits beside him. She doesn't speak. She simply stays close enough that their shoulders almost meet. Then her fingers brush his sleeve, small contact, silent question. Perseus murmurs, I'm here, though she hasn't asked. Days pass in a slow drift. The ship creaks and sighs, wood expanding and contracting with temperature, sounding like an old house that remembers every storm it ever survived. Andromeda begins to sleep, not deeply at first, but enough that her breathing softens in the dark. Perseus keeps watch more than he needs to, as if vigilance itself can protect her. He stares at the knot on the sack until his eyes blur. because that knot is the border between peace and catastrophe. When they finally spot Seriphos, it appears as a dark hump on the horizon. Land smell reaches them faintly. Earth, pine, smoke. Perseus's heart tightens, not with joy but with dread that tastes like metal. Home is not safe for him. Home is where Polydectes waits. They dock at a small harbor where fishermen mend nets. The island looks ordinary stone houses, goats bleating on hillsides, children chasing each other with sticks. It's almost insulting how normal it appears, how little it reveals of the quiet cruelty inside its palace. A man approaches from the shore, older, weathered, kind eyes. Dictys. Perseus's chest loosens for the first time since spotting the island. Dictys's face breaks into a grin, then falters when he sees the sack and the woman beside him. Perseus. Dictys breathes. You're alive. Perseus nods. And my mother? Dictys glances around, then leans in, voice low. She's alive too, he says, but not free. His jaw tightens. Polydectes grew impatient. He's been boasting you died. Perseus feels the harbor. Sounds dim, like someone stuffed wool into his ears. His heartbeat becomes the loudest thing in the world. Honestly, rage is not a flame for him now. It is ice, cold, clear certainty. Andromeda touches his forearm, light pressure, grounding. Perseus looks at her and sees fear, yes, but also trust. He nods once. Stay with Dictys, he tells her softly. In his house. Don't go near the palace. He pauses. And if you hear shouting, don't come. You don't need to see what I'm about to do. Andromeda's lips part, as if to argue, then close. She nods. Her fingers squeeze his arm once, then release. A simple gesture that feels heavier than any ring. Perseus turns inland. The path to the palace climbs gently. Dust rises with each step, sticking to his damp boots. The sun is bright, but the air remains cool. Birds sing in the olive trees. Careless. Perseus hates them for it. Just a little, because they have no idea what waits at the top of the hill. Guards at the gate straighten when they see him. Someone whispers his name like a prayer or a curse. Inside, corridors smell of old stone, wax, and stale wine. He remembers running barefoot here as a child, chasing echoes. Now his footsteps are heavy. Each sound feels like it belongs to someone else. He stops in a side corridor before the hall and rests his palm against the wall. The stone is cold and slightly damp, as if the building itself sweats secrets. His hand comes away smelling of minerals and age. For a second, his mind slips backward. He sees himself smaller, running barefoot, laughing as he stole figs from the kitchens. Then the memory darkens into another. His mother going quiet whenever Polydectes entered. Servants lowering their eyes. The way power makes air feel thinner. He closes his eyes. Behind his eyelids there are faces. Andromeda's bruised wrists. Medusa's dead stare. Danae's tight smile that tried to hide fear. He breathes anyway. In, out. Slow enough that the pounding in his chest becomes something he can walk beside instead of a stampede. At the doors of the hall, he touches the carved wood, glossy from years of hands, warm from torch heat. There's a small groove, some child's old scratch packed with dirt. Even palaces keep grime in their corners. Even king stories have cracks where truth lives. He pushes the doors open. Heat rolls out first, thick with bodies and wine. Then, smells sour grapes, sweat soaked into wool, meat fat cooling on plates. It makes his stomach tighten, not from disgust, but from recognition. This is the scent of a room where people pretend nothing is wrong, until blood forces honesty. The hall is crowded. Men with rings on their fingers, men with soft bellies from easy meals, men with hard eyes who smile like blades. They talk over each other, laugh too loudly, slap tables, demand more drink, and when Perseus steps in, The laughter stutters, like a song interrupted mid-verse. Whispers rise. It's him. I thought he drowned. What is that he carries? Polydectes sits at the far end on his carved chair, cup in hand, cloak lined with fur. He looks polished, comfortable, certain of himself, until his eyes land on Perseus. For a heartbeat, the smile slips. Then it returns, practiced. Perseus, he says, voice warm as oil. As I live, the sea returned what it stole. Perseus walks forward slowly. Each step is a decision. He stops close enough to smell wine on the king's breath, close enough to see a twitch at the corner of Polydectes' eye. I bring what you asked for, Perseus says, quiet and flat. And I bring my mother back. Polydectes' gaze slides toward the corridor that leads to Danae's rooms, warning, hidden in a glance. Perseus feels it like a hand around his throat. He steadies himself by noticing small things. Wax dripping down a torch, a dog's nails clicking on stone, a bracelet clinking as a man shifts. The world is made of details. Details are where you hide when the bigger picture tries to crush you. Did you truly find the Gorgon? Polydectes asks, softly. Perseus thinks of the cave's cold drip, the statues frozen mid-plea, the moment Medusa's eye opened in his shield's reflection. Yes, he answers. A hush spreads. Polydectes laughs once, short. Then show us, he says. Let the island see what you claim. He reaches the great hall. Voices spill out laughter, clapping, drunken boasting. Polydectes' voice slides through it all, smooth as oil. And the boy, poor fool, went to find the Gorgon. No man returns. Perseus steps into the hall. Conversation stutters. Faces turn. Polydectes' smile starts confident, then slips, just slightly, when he recognizes the living man he has been mocking. I bring what you asked for, Perseus says quietly, moving forward with the sack in his grip. And I bring my mother back. Polydectes' eyes sharpen. He gestures lazily, like brushing away a fly. Show us, he says, voice too casual. Let us see this famous proof. Perseus feels sweat gather under his collar despite the cool stone. His fingertips slip slightly on the cord, and he tightens them until the fibers bite. Around him, chairs creak as men lean forward, hungry for proof. A torch pops, spitting a tiny ember. Someone coughs. Even that cough sounds loud, like the hall is a throat, trying to clear itself before swallowing what comes next. Perseus nods. As you wish, he murmurs. He turns his head slightly away, because even now he respects the danger. He feels the knot under his fingers. He breathes in, slow, tasting dust and old wine and the faint metallic scent of fear. And that is where he pauses, because what comes next will not be a battle of blades. It will be a stillness forced on living bodies. It will be justice. Perhaps it will also be horror. Perseus stands in the doorway of that moment, and the air holds its breath with him. The hall smells of wine and sweat, and old stone warmed by too many bodies. Torches flicker along the walls, and their light makes everyone's faces look slightly unreal, as if they are already halfway into statue. Perseus feels that thought brush his mind and tries to push it away. He doesn't want to see people as sculptures. That is Medusa's language, not his. Still, he cannot deny what he carries. Polydectes leans forward, elbow on the arm of his chair, chin resting on his knuckles. The posture is lazy. The eyes are not. They glitter. He is curious. He is hungry. He believes curiosity is his right. You heard the king, a noble calls, voice thick with wine. Show us. Laughter breaks out again, forced, sharp. Men slap the table. Someone whistles. It's the sound of a crowd begging for spectacle, as if danger is a play they can clap for. Perseus keeps his gaze lowered. He does not look at faces. He looks at the floor, dark stone worn smooth by years of footsteps. He sees a crack, like a thin lightning bolt running. Between two tiles, he sees a smear of spilled wine drying into a sticky patch. Small details, anchors. You know that trick, don't you? When your mind is about to drown, you grab anything solid and name it. He lifts the sack slightly, just enough that the cord slides against his palm. The cord is rough. It bites into his skin. His fingers feel strangely cold, even in the warm hall. He can hear a faint shifting inside the soft rasp of snakes, moving in cramped darkness. Not loud, just enough to remind him this is alive in a dead way. Perseus, Polydectes, says again, voice sweet. Why the hesitation? He spreads his hands in mock innocence. We are all friends here. A few men chuckle. Perseus hears the lie in that laughter, the way you hear rot in a sweet smell. Perseus breathes in, then out. He raises his voice, not shouting, but firm enough that it lands like a stone dropped into water. Everyone, he says, turn your faces away. The room stirs. A few men look at each other, confused. Perseus continues, calm, almost gentle. If you value your eyes, do not look. He pauses. I am not offering entertainment. Polydectes snorts. Superstition, he says lightly, but his fingers tighten around the armrest. He is afraid. He will not admit it. Let them look, he says. What can a boy's sack contain that frightens grown men? Perseus feels something inside him harden. Not hatred, decision. He thinks of Danae, alone with a man who smiles while he corners you. He thinks of Dictys' worried eyes at the harbor. He thinks of Andromeda's question on the ship, does it ever stop? No, not unless someone stops it. Fine, Perseus murmurs. He turns his head to the side, eyes focusing on the bronze rim of his shield. He lifts the shield so it catches torchlight, so it becomes a mirror. His hands move with practiced care. Knot, loop, tug. The cord loosens. The hall quiets, because silence loves moments like this. Even drunk men feel the shift. That subtle change when a room becomes a mouth and everyone is waiting to be fed. Perseus opens the sack only a finger's width. In the shield's reflection, Medusa's face appears. Not beautiful, not monstrous in a theatrical way, just wrong. Skin pale and still, lips slightly parted as if she was about to speak and never finished. Snakes coiled around her head like thoughts that never sleep. And then her eye opens. It is not angry. It is not sad. It is simply seeing. A man closest to Perseus, one of Polydectes' companions, leans in despite himself, curiosity pulling him like a hook. His eyes meet the reflection. Before he can remember the warning, his expression changes. Surprise first, then a kind of blankness. His skin pales. Gray spreads from his cheeks outward, like ash settling. His open mouth stiffens mid-laugh. His fingers, still curled around a goblet, harden. The goblet drops. It hits stone and does not shatter because the hand holding it is already stone too. Another man shouts. He turns to run. His foot lifts. His body freezes in that motion. Stone crawls. Up his calf. His eyes widen. Then they dull, turning to rock's dull stare. A chair scrapes back. A sword rings as it falls. A priest's voice rises in prayer and cuts off like a candle blown out. Polydectes jerks to his feet. He tries to turn away, but the hall is chaos now, and chaos makes people look in the wrong direction. He glances toward the shield. Just a flick, just long enough. His face stiffens. His mouth opens to shout and becomes a carved O. His hands reach out as if to push the air away. They stop. Gray climbs his wrists, his forearms, his throat. The last thing Perseus sees in Polydectes' eyes is not rage. It is realization, the sudden knowledge that power can die in silence. Perseus snaps the sack shut. He ties it fast, fingers moving even as his heart pounds hard enough to bruise his ribs. The sound of transformation fades. The hall becomes still. Torch flames continue to flicker. Smoke continues to curl upward. But people, so many people, are now statues, frozen in fear, frozen in mockery, frozen mid-step, mid-breath, mid-word. Perseus lowers the shield. He does not look at Medusa. He does not look at the statues for too long either, because it is too easy to turn them into justice and forget they were flesh a moment ago. He stands in the middle of the hall and listens. No screams, no laughter, only the crackle of fire, only the soft drip of wine, still sliding off a table's edge. Footsteps approach from a side corridor, soft, careful. Danae appears, escorted by an older servant. Her hair is tied back, her dress plain, her face is pale. When she sees Perseus, her eyes widen and fill. For a heartbeat, she does not move. Then she rushes forward and presses her hands to his cheeks, as if confirming he is real. "My son," she whispers. Her voice cracks. I thought. She cannot finish. Her fingers tremble. Perseus takes her hands and kisses her knuckles, the way he remembers doing as a child. His throat tightens. "I'm here," he says. "I'm here." Danae's gaze flicks past him and lands on the stone figure of Polydectes. Her breath catches. She covers her mouth. There is no triumph on her face, only a complicated, exhausted relief. The relief of a door finally locking against someone who kept forcing it open. Dictys enters behind her, eyes wide at the statues. He looks at Perseus, then at Danae, then back again, as if trying to find words that fit this impossible stillness. Perseus speaks first. "Dictys," he says quietly, "the island needs a king who doesn't hunt." He glances at the stone chair Polydectes left behind. "It should be you." Dictys swallows. His eyes shine. He shakes his head once, reflexively, as if refusing a gift too heavy. But Perseus's gaze is steady. Danae nods too, slowly. Dictys' shoulders sag as if accepting responsibility is another kind of chain. Yet he does not step away. He bows his head, not in pride, but in solemn agreement. Perseus leads them out of the hall. Servants watch from doorways, silent, frightened, relieved, unsure whether to worship or flee. Outside, the air is bright. Birds sing. It feels obscene. How normal the courtyard looks after a hall full of stone. Perseus and Danae walk down to Dictys' modest house near the shore. The path is familiar, and yet Perseus notices it differently now. The olive leaves shimmer in sunlight. Dust rises and settles. A lizard darts across a warm rock and disappears. The world continues. It always does. That evening, Perseus sits with his mother inside Dictys' house. A small fire burns. The smell of wood smoke wraps around them. Danae eats slowly, as if her body forgot how to accept food without fear. Perseus watches her and feels the ache of all the years she spent bracing. He wants to apologize for leaving. He wants to say, "I should have been here." But he knows guilt is a stone you can't carve into something useful. So he simply stays. He breathes with her. He lets quiet fill the room like warm water. Andromeda arrives the next day, brought by Dictys' men from the harbor. She steps into the house and pauses, eyes scanning, cautious. Danae rises and approaches her, gentle, palms open. Andromeda dips her head respectfully. They do not speak at first. Two women, both survivors of men's hunger, recognizing something in each other without needing to name it. Danae touches Andromeda's wrist lightly, where the chain marks have begun to fade but not disappear. Andromeda's throat works as she swallows. Danae whispers, "You're safe here." Andromeda's eyes fill, just slightly. She nods once. Safe. A simple word that feels like a miracle. Days pass. Dictys begins to reorganize the island. Polydectes statues are moved to a guarded courtyard, not hidden, not displayed as trophies, but kept as warning. Perseus does not like looking at them, yet he understands why they must remain. Some lessons have to stand in sunlight. One night, Perseus walks alone down to the shore. Moonlight lays a pale path on the water. Waves lap softly. The sound is steady, hypnotic. He carries the sack because he cannot yet leave it anywhere without feeling the old dread. He sits on a rock and stares at the horizon. The world beyond Seriphos calls to him. Argos, his grandfather, the prophecy, the idea that you can run forever and still collide with fate. Andromeda joins him quietly after a while, cloak wrapped tight. She sits beside him without speaking. They watch the sea. At last she says, softly, "Will you go back?" Meaning Argos, meaning the place where the story began. Perseus exhales. He tastes salt. "I don't know," he admits. "Part of me wants to face it." He rubs his thumb over the ring Cepheus gave him. "Part of me wants to hide." He laughs once, a dry sound. "And I've learned hiding only invites hunters." Andromeda nods. She watches the moonlight on the water. "I used to think fate was a monster," she says. "Something with teeth." She glances at. "Now, I think fate is quieter than that." Her voice dips. A small choice, a proud sentence, a man's hunger. She looks down at her own hands. And then, suddenly, you're chained to a cliff. Perseus feels a chill. He understands. He reaches for her hand. Careful. She lets him take it. Their fingers interlace. The contact is simple, warm, human. In the following weeks, Perseus prepares to leave Seriphos. Not because he wants to chase glory, because the world beyond the island still holds unfinished darkness. Acrisius may still live, and if he does, he may still fear the prophecy enough to harm someone else. Perseus has learned something bitter. Fear can be as violent as pride. Before departure, Perseus visits a small shrine. He returns the winged sandals, the helmet, the polished blade gifts that were never meant to stay with him. He keeps only the sword and the sack. He does not want to keep any of it. But some burdens follow you like your own shadow. When the day comes to leave, dawn is soft again. The harbor is quiet. Dictys stands at the shore with a hand on Danae's shoulder. Danae's eyes shine, but she holds herself steady, like a woman who has learned to survive goodbye. Andromeda stands beside Perseus. Her posture is straighter now, still wary, still carrying memories like stones in her pockets, but she stands. Perseus embraces his mother. He feels her arms tighten around him. Her body is smaller than he remembers. He hates that time can make a person shrink. He whispers, "I'll come back." He does not promise when. Promises about time are too fragile, but he means the return. Danae presses her lips to his temple. "Be careful," she whispers, "not just with blades." Her fingers touch the sack. With that, Perseus nods. "I will." The ship pushes off. Seriphos fades behind them. The sea opens. The horizon waits. Time does what it always does, quietly, relentlessly. The sea carries them to other shores. Perseus avoids Argos at first, like a sailor avoiding a reef, yet roads bend back on themselves. At Larissa, there are funeral games. Crowds gather. Dust rises under sandals. Perseus enters the ring because it seems harmless sport, not war. He takes the discus and feels its smooth weight, cool as river stone. He swings. The disc sings through the air, and then a gust nudges it, just enough. A startled cry, bodies part, and there, on the ground, an old man, with blood darkening the dust. Acrisius, not hunted, not hated, only met by fate in the smallest, cruelest way. Perseus kneels, shaking, and he finally understands. You can run from a prophecy, and it will still find the quiet path to you. And as the oars pull rhythm into the water, Perseus closes his eyes for a moment and lets the sound of waves slow his thoughts, letting the darkness of the story settle into a calmer kind of night inside his chest. And when he opens his eyes again, the world is still there, still moving, still breathing. And for now, that is enough. Good night.